they tested waters with me because they wanted to develop something against Xiaomi, but they were shit scared about doing it against Xiaomi.
Hmm.
So they did not even have the balls to make sure that probably they can go and fight against Xiaomi. Everybody said the same thing, that is one of the toughest industry to crack. I think that's my biggest mistake and biggest learning, I would say, with Honor and HonorTech. See, from 8 crore rupees of your pieces investment to a revenue of around 20,000 crore rupees to a valuation of around 17 or around 12 billion. This is the journey which I've seen.
I think that's fascinating. Right now, there is this really cool spotlight put on India. A book Apple has started manufacturing here. A book has come out called Apple in China.
I believe Apple is one of the smartest company in the world,
Mhm.
right? And they had their own set of learning. Pretty interesting question. Nobody has asked me this question in the past, but I think it's
The headline here is probably the most successful pre-seed investment in India of all time was almost. Hello and welcome to another episode of Ideas to Enterprises. I'm really excited for this one. Today's guest is Madhav Sheth. Madhav has lived so many lives in the smartphone industry in India. He's practically built it from founding Realme, a spin-out from Oppo back in 2018, to bringing Honor to India and also setting up the new kid on the block, AI Plus. You'll learn a lot in this episode. You're going to hear about what I believe is the greatest pre-seed investment in all of Indian history. You're going to learn about the nuances of building a smartphone. What are the trade-offs that happen? How do you actually build one? How do you market one? You're going to hear about India-China tension, not just geopolitical, but boardroom drama and a little bit of culture clash. You're going to learn about how exciting it is to be in India right now in this ecosystem, how we are on the uptrend, and how Madhav is building his next best expression, AI Plus. With that, I give you Madhav Sheth. All right, Madhav, thank you so much for taking the time to join us at Ideas to Enterprises. We appreciate you taking our time in the middle of a fantastic AI Plus launch. Congratulations for that.
Thank you very much.
So,
Thank you very much.
Madhav, what would be really cool place to start is we know right now you're riding high. AI Plus just sold out on its first day. Congratulations, that's an incredible achievement. But how does someone go from being in the sales section of the printing industry to dominating India's smartphone landscape? How does that even happen?
Pretty interesting question. Nobody has asked me this question in the past, but I think it's an interesting question. Yeah. I think I've learned basics from printing to sold teddy bears and sold greeting cards. And the greeting card journey was something which led me to the mobile journey because I think it was been replaced by technology. Uh, Birthdays and messages and anniversaries were wished through SMSs
Hmm.
back in 1990s and 2000, and it was been replaced from the greeting card to from a traditional paper or medium to the technology medium, and that's where I was more inclined towards moving towards the technology field. And at the same time, while I was doing my graduation, I sold a lot of, I would say, recharges for the smartphone brands, not smartphone brands, but I would say the operator brands. At that time, it used to be Orange or it used to be any other brands like maybe Geo or Idea or anyone. I had sold the recharges for them. And that's how I was more inclined towards this particular industry of smartphones because I used to go to the shops, small mom and pop stores, where I used to see that, where is the value of the business, what we get. And the value of the business was never the recharges, but always on the smartphone side.
Hmm.
And I think that was what the more inclination for me was all about.
I think that's really interesting. Where there's a similarity is my mother runs a small printing company where they make wedding cards. So hopefully one day she starts Realme 2.0. I'll tell her to sort of keep an eye. So that's how it began. It was really interesting. So that one core insight of hey, the recharges are where a lot of the economic value is at. What I found something you said to be really insightful was the way people were communicating shifted. There was a shift from actually a purchase of a physical card to an SMS. So was that the first couple of realizations that led you to joining Oppo?
See, let me put it that way. I think it is always a customer backward integration. For
Hmm.
me, it has never been what is my aspiration to be. It is always customer backward integration because as an entrepreneur, we might think that whatever we are doing is one of the best thing what we would have done in our life. But I think that would not be the right thing for the consumers. So I think understanding pain point of the consumers and having that backward integration was one of the most important core objective of mine, and that kept me moving and shifting industries. But it was always in a technology field. Back from starting from 2000, going up to 2035, I've always been into this industry only. But yes, I have seen the evolution of this industry, and I would like to continue being into this industry as well. So by saying this, Oppo was the first one as a professional journey which I did. But at the same time, I've done in the past, I was working with Nokia's or Blackberries or as a distributor for Samsung also back in 2010. So I've sold phones after recharges. I've sold phones also
Got
to
it.
the shops. I've exported smartphones to different countries, and I think that's where I got more inclination that the market is much bigger than what we think. If the population is around 7.5 billion population in the world, even if half of the people live in the world, there are 3.5 or 4 billion population, which is addressable market. And I think that was the whole reason I think this inclination happened.
Very cool. So let's take the clock. That was 2010. Let's fast forward to a point in time. It's 2018. Realme is launching. There's a lot happening in the ecosystem. Xiaomi is dominating. Samsung is still trying to figure it out. Geo is starting to really hit its peak effect, right? Gap kya tha? What was it that caused you to say, "Hey, there's a space for another challenger"? Why did the tell us the story of Realme?
Before Realme, I think you need to get into one story, which is Oppo. When I joined Oppo,
Mm-hmm.
the entire system was dominated by Oppo and Vivo from 2014 to 2018. And while Indian brands were diminishing, foreign brands and mainly Chinese brands were getting up, mainly Oppo and Vivo. So at that point of time, there were no sub brands like what we have today, like iQOO, Realme, or anyone. So there were only two or three brands which initially started with this back in 2014 was Oppo and Vivo. Initially, first was the Oppo, and then after a year or so, the Vivo came into the market. And then I think there was a war between, actually, it is not a war, I would say, but it's a same group company which wanted to dominate the market. And at the same time, I think Xiaomi also entered the space. But Xiaomi took a different route. The best thing what I like about Xiaomi is, they understand consumers better.
Hmm.
I've always appreciated companies who have understand consumers better. Right. And Xiaomi understands consumers better. He targeted the right consumers at the right price points and brought the right technology products at the right time. And that was my one of the first inclination that yes, technology is not just about building a product, is understanding the consumer and developing the product at the same time targeting the consumers in the right frame set. I think that was the first point, which was the biggest space or a gap for the brands like Oppo or Vivo,
Hmm.
right? And they never used to do that. So they all were predominantly in offline. They used to have a Chinese distribution system. They still have the Chinese distribution system. They still have. So for them, the understanding the consumers was very difficult for them. The consumer pain was very difficult for them. While Xiaomi entered the market directly, deal in online, got the real feedback of the consumers, and that's how they started. So this was from 2015 to 2018. When I entered 2018, it's always been said that it's one of the toughest industry. Yeah, when I was in 2010 or 2005 or 2015, everybody said the same thing that is one of the toughest industry to crack.
Hmm.
Even in 2025, when I was launching a smartphone brand, they said it's one of the toughest industry to crack. Right. But most importantly, what I've seen, there's always a white space. And that white space back in 2018, while you asked me a question about Realme, the white space was that, in online, there was only one brand which was dominating around 70 to 80% market share.
Hmm.
You cannot have any market or any economy with one brand dominating 70 to 80%. There's always a room for at least two or three brands if there's a market which is so big and one brand dominating around 70 80%. So that's how I address the market. You look at the total addressable market, then you see who are the players into it and what is the market share they are addressing to it. And if they're addressing more than 50%, definitely there's a scope of getting into it and bridging that particular gap and making a space for yourself. So that's how I felt that there's a space for it. And secondly, Oppo, while I was working in Oppo never wanted to go into online space.
Hmm.
They were very clear on one thing that they will never do online because they never wanted to disturb their offline structure, which was a capex heavy structure. Like they used to give 30-35%, which they still give 30-35% to the channel margins. With 30-35% channel margins at the cost of a consumer was very expensive, while Xiaomi was able to pass on this benefit to the consumer directly. And that's where I saw that probably why, as I said, why can't we work backward and give this benefit to the consumer directly?
Hmm.
So if your BOM cost is same, just because you have a different channel strategy, which is increasing the cost to the consumer, why can't we have a leaner cost and go to the consumers directly?
Hmm.
I have right now currently, like say for example, Oppo, Vivo, or to say even Xiaomi now they're being an offline brand. Or any other brand, they have about 30, 40,000 promoters in the market, which push the stocks or which deceives the customers or perceives, gives the right perception or gives the wrong perception to the customers. So their job is to make sure that probably they sell whatever the customers come into it. They will always ensure that force sell of their own brand. That is their main job, including Samsung. So I think if you go through that particular journey, that's the entire cost waterfall.
Hmm.
And this waterfall, I wanted to ensure that it will be passed on to the consumers
Hmm.
and be more transparent and more direct. So that's how Realme came into picture. Second white space which I found out was Oppo and Vivo being an offline dominated brand, heavy capex margin, they did not wanted to disturb their channel.
Hmm.
So they will. I started with their online series of Oppo, which did very well. But I got a lot of resistance back in 2017 from their offline trade, stating that probably cannot work like this. You have to shut it down. So there was a point that probably I was told to shut it down, but they will not disturb their offline channels because they were all Chinese distributors and having thick relations with the owners. So they did not wanted to do that, which was Kylie at that point of time in India.
Hmm.
And Kylie being the VP, I think at that point of time, he had a very thick relationship with all the Chinese distributors across India, which he never wanted to disturb that ecosystem. So there was only one thought which I told him that, let me give it a shot. If it fails, I fail. You don't fail anyways, right?
Hmm.
If I give it a shot, so give me a team of about 4 or 5 people or 7 people. I will hire them myself, start from a smaller room within the Oppo, and let me try it. There was one product from Oppo which was supposed to be discarded. I believe that it may not be an offline product, but it was a very good online product because it was a very good performance product in MediaTek chipset.
Hmm.
So I wanted to make sure that probably the consumers are able to experience the performance apart from Qualcomm also. So MediaTek was only considered as an offline chipset at that point of time between Qualcomm and MediaTek. So MediaTek, I was the first one to launch P60 series or P series, in fact, to the consumers in online, which entirely changed the perception of MediaTek P series as an online series as well, which was initially only and only Xiaomi only used to use Qualcomm as one of their chipsets. So that also changed the perception. Now, when we moved over there, I took that particular product, launched it as Realme, and made sure that probably I saw much, I would say, a great success in first sale itself. We sold about 70, 80,000 units, and we were able to sell it out, and everybody was astonished
Hmm.
that at the same, I've heard multiple times that this industry is impossible to break through, and you cannot get into it. But I think we sold off, and that's how Realme journey started.
I think that's a phenomenal story. I think the other thing when I hear this is that's such an interesting dynamic at play, right? So a lot of the strengths that Oppo built, the deep network of distributors, the offline relationships, also ended up becoming kind of challenges or pushbacks for you to create a challenger brand or an online first brand. Did that lead to any drama or tension internally? Was there a little bit of a tension in creating something like this?
Yeah, there was multiple things, right? I was told to leave the company if I not stop doing their online business, right? Because they will never disturb their online business. They don't want to disturb any ecosystem.
Hmm.
Uh, so it is like, why you want to, stop that milking cow and,
Hmm.
start building up a new one until unless you're not sure about it. So any businessman would have thought, I'm not saying they're wrong, but any businessman would have thought about it. But I probably believe that you should have balls to understand what the consumers are rather
Yeah.
than just thinking about the channel. And that's the only difference between me and them that I think about the consumer first and I don't give a shit about what the channel thinks about, right? Most important channel is just one of the medium to reach to the consumers. Find the best channel who understands consumers better, right? But if you try to learn the channel by giving them incentives and sending them to Bangkok, and that's at the end of the day is at the cost of the consumer, is no point at all, right?
Hmm.
It's much better to have a very transparent system and reach to the consumer in the leanest way. And that's, I think, the reason I chose was about Flipkart, which also had a similar DNA of being agile. And at the same time, they also wanted to establish a brand. They were also looking at a white space because they also understood one thing that one brand cannot have 70, 80% market share. There needs to be more brands. And that's where they believed in me and they also established this brand.
I think it's one of the most successful, call it skunkwork project stories in India, right? So it starts with a group of people, entrepreneurial, 5 or 7 people, to create this challenger brand. You go on to ink what is probably one of the most famous partnerships. The Realme Flipkart partnership was, very well studied and a fantastic outcome. But so day N, you decide let's build Realme. Walk us through the series of decisions that were taken. What was N+1? How did you put that team together? What was the first few months of Realme like?
See, the first few months of Realme were extremely challenging because I think if I have to deep dive into my journey, there are two things which I understood is that I wasted too much of my time to give them an understanding of what the consumers in India want.
Hmm.
Um, that was the major because I'm more of a product guy. I like building products, and I am fanatic about building products and understanding consumer pain points. How can I solve it? And most importantly, the biggest pick which I get in developing product is to understand consumer pain points 12 months in advance, not today. So to understand what would be that pain points after 12 months, that is something which really excites me while developing a product because whenever you are developing a product, you are not developing the product for the current market. You are developing the product or for the market which is going to buy after 12 or 18 months. And that's where you have to start forecasting on what the consumer's behavior pattern would be. So I think that was one of the things. While if I have to tell about the series of the decisions, I would say yes. We did Realme 1, we did Realme 2, and then we started expanding our product portfolio. We started with sub 10K, which was penetration. And then we started getting into masses and then into classes. So we kept on developing products. We kept on leveraging technologies. We made sure that probably we get the right consumer insights. And what you rightly said that probably yes, Flipkart partnership really helped us because there were a lot of consumer data, which really helped us on day-to-day basis to understand what color preferences, how would a consumer buy, what would be their buying journey, how the things would be. Everything was discussed at this point in time. So I think this was a few of the key decisions on understanding the product and making the products and having that backward integration.
That's really interesting. So, it's still, I believe at around that point the spin-off is yet to happen. It's under the BKK umbrella. BKK is such a mysterious entity for us outsiders. How does it work? Is there internal competition? Is there learning? How did it work under that larger umbrella for you guys? Or could you just help us understand this BKK umbrella a bit better?
First of all, it's
BBK, sorry.
BBK, it's
Yeah,
BBK
BBK.
group. Yes, BBK. Okay, let me put it one way. BBK was the one who started the Blu-ray DVDs, who's selling in US. The Blu-ray DVDs are one of the most expensive and I would say one of the best DVDs, Blu-ray DVDs, which have been sold out and very expensive ones. They started from China, they went to US. Now the bosses are sitting in US. Uh, Oppo and Vivo, the guys who are running the Oppo and Vivo right now, they used to work for BBK Group, right? They were the engineers in BBK Group, and they started this company Oppo, and they started this Vivo, where BBK was an investor to it, right? So when we say it's a BBK group, yes, it's a BBK group, but it's coming from one umbrella as a part of an investment. But as a strategy, I think still they work on independent strategy. Like this is my understanding. I'm not aware, and to that extent, that to what extent the decisions are completely, in synonymous with all the brands together. But one thing which I understand is that yes, might be there might be certain investments and certain shareholders would be common, but at the same time, Oppo and Vivo they come from the same family, and but they have a different separate group of business decisions. But at the same time, while Oppo has now multiple brands within the Oppo brand, which are from Oppo only, it may be OnePlus, it may be Realme.
Hmm.
While Vivo would have iQOO, Vivo would have another series in offline online. So, but all these are sub-brands of the same company. They are not a separate company altogether. So in India, if you see the top five brands, except if Xiaomi is there and Samsung, I think all of them are from one particular group. And so I call it as more of a monopoly and duopoly market, where there are a group of companies who are establishing as a one single principle of doing business in India while they are synced on the compliance part and while they are synced on a lot of other aspects of it on how to do business in India, Fundamentally, only the channel strategy and the back panels are changed in India. That's it. I
Hmm.
think rest everything remains the same, which is coming down from top down.
Interesting. And you mentioned that you're very product focused. What would you attribute a lot of the growth to the original Realme phones to it? It can't just be product, right? I think the content was incredible, the distribution was. How would you attribute the first few sort of successes to Realme 2?
I always say there are three I's to success, which is three I's is intent, investment, and infrastructure. Talking about investment, people who think that smartphone you need billions of dollars is not that point.
Hmm.
For talking about intent is that your intent of building a product, your partners intend to sell the product, your consumers intend to buy the product, and the reason to buy, reason to sell, and reason to develop. If they are coinciding with each other, then all the three intents matches up. Then probably you have a right product set to go forward and reach to the last mile consumer.
Hmm.
That's how I call it the intent. Investment is to make sure that probably we have the right investment in the market, not enough investment, not like what Oppo and Vivo did that they painted the toilets also blue and green, but enough investments to make sure that probably you reach to the right audiences who understands product. And the way I approached the market was I believe that back in 2018, every home has an influencer, a tech influencer, which would be maybe your son or your daughter, whose father or mother would believe in it that any technology product he would always ask his son or daughter.
Right off,
So
yeah.
there's always one person in the family who has been referred to as a influencer in the family for technology products. Uh, so that person is sometimes was my target audience. And we knew that in India, there are Gen Z consumers, and more than 50% of the consumers are young in India. If I'm able to reach to them, I'll reach the rest of the 50% audience through them, via them. So the most important point is to make sure that to educate these consumers, who are the young consumers, who expects everything from the product. So what we always have, or what foreign brands always believe, that India is a price conscious market. I believe it's not a price conscious market; it's a value conscious
Hmm.
market.
Yeah.
What does a value conscious mean is that probably they will pay the right price for a particular product. So they can buy a 2 lakh rupees product also, they can buy a 2000 rupees product also. But they should feel worth out of it. Worth would be in terms of usage or in terms of aspiration. But they should feel worth out of it. And that is the reason I say it's a value conscious market. We all Indians come from an humble background where we were valued for whatever we spend, which means that we will not spend just because of the emotional reasons, but we'll spend for some logical reasons. And the logical reasoning has to be a value conscious approach, and that is what I put it as a tangible way of deciding while making a purchase.
Hmm.
So if I saw that this is how the consumers perceives, then probably this is the way I have to reach. And that's the reason I built the Realme community, which was a group of young people from the age of 18 to around 35. And they were the ones who used to come, they were the advocate for the brand across. I used to do a lot of developing codes with them. I used to do make sure that probably I open codes for them so they can develop customized ROMs. I used to do a lot of things to make sure that they are engaged with us, not just as a marketing activity, but also they are engaging on a product to product basis. Create a developer community, creators community, and these influencers are the one who spreaded the word of mouth. And I think these are basic fundamental things which you do it to establish a brand. Spending and spray painting, like if you get an investor's money and spray paint it everywhere on the town, it's easy to do it. But do you think it's a long-lasting thing? Probably not. I believe that the fundamental of building a brand is to make sure that probably we do the right thing from bottoms up rather than doing a top-down approach. Make sure they probably understand the consumer, reach out to them, understand the pain points, redevelop the product, rethink it, build the community, make them the advocate of the community, make them the advocate of your product. Uh, Word of mouth is the most and the best way of marketing of any brand, rather than any spray paintings. That's what I've always believed. Because I'll be very honest with you, the budget which I got to launch a Realme as a brand in the initial days was 8 crore rupees.
Really?
Yeah, my budget was 8 crore rupees to launch a brand, launch a product, to establish a channel, and to make sure that probably I also use that as a part of my working capital, a bit of my working capital also. So this is how it was, right? So
Madhav,
you
let's
have to
let's
understand.
contrast that. Let's contrast that 8 crore figure. So you get 8 crore. What was the mother brand for just the budget for marketing? Let's forget all of that at the same year.
See, if I'm talking about Oppo,
Yeah.
Oppo had a budget of around 1,000 or 1,200 crores. That was the time when they bought the
The
BCCI
cricket
team
team.
and cricket teams and everything. Uh, but they tested waters with me because they wanted to develop something against Xiaomi, but they were shit scared about doing it against Xiaomi. Let me put it that way. Because the reason is because they did not wanted to disturb their offline channel.
Hmm.
So they did not even have the balls to make sure that probably they can go and fight against Xiaomi. That was the reason I said, okay, I'm ready to take the hit and ready to take the punt. Let me try it. I feel if it succeeds, we all succeed. If it fails, I fail. So I'm okay to take that bet because I have nothing to lose across, but I believe in this particular ecosystem and I want to try it. That's how it works.
I can't turn off the investor lens. When I hear all of this, I'm starting to think that the headline here is probably the most successful pre-seed investment in India of all time was Oppo putting 8 crores into the Realme entity. But you mentioned it's incredible, yeah, and this is a story that needs to be better told. I think the other thing you talked a lot about community, and I found that to be quite fascinating. I noticed in a lot of the experiments you had, for example, the Ask Madhav series, the comments are just walls of love and product request features. Have you ever had an instance where the community and social media has led you to taking a product decision?
Yes, 100%. Uh, I've always, again, I'm telling you one thing. First of all, community should not be led by any marketing team.
Yeah,
Community should be led by an independent company or independent team, and community manager should directly report to a CEO. If you are talking about VCs or any organization structure, this is the biggest thing what you should do. Right now, also, they put everything under marketing, and marketing will only use community for the marketing as a tool,
correct.
community as a tool. आप launch में लाओ उनसे ताली बजवाओ. That's how people do it. That's the maximum use of a community what they do it right now. And what I built the community was just to make sure that probably we hear from them. I've always one of the person who has always interacted. The reason, if I had to tell you, Ask Madhav also was one of the most successful series, and people did after that. A lot of brands tried doing that. There was only one reason because I used to get hell lot of comments and I was not able to answer it.
Hmm.
So what I told my team at that point of time, there was no AI. AI has been there since 1950, but there was no generative AI who can collate the comments and give it to me as a summarize that what are the what are the word clouds right now or what are the comment clouds right now. So what happened? I used to tell my team that collate all the comments. Let's answer it once a month. I would not be able to keep on answering it. Initially, in the initial days, I was free. I just launched one product. So somebody used to tweet me. I only used to have 4,000 followers or 3,000 followers or even 1,000 followers. Somebody used to tweeting me, "Good morning, sir. Can we? What do you think about having this color on the phone?" I used to chat him. I used to chat with him on Twitter itself,
Nice.
right? So it was never a DM. It was always on Twitter. I used to chat because I did not had anything else apart from it to talk and understand what are the consumer pain points. So that's how the idea of Ask Madhav also came in. The problem, why can't I take up all the questions and answer it once a month? So at least my community feels that they are answered.
Hmm.
The most important thing about community or anything is to get their answers being in place if they are asking something,
Hmm.
right?
I think
That's it.
I think that's fascinating. We're seeing a lot of CEOs embrace direct to customer conversations of late. Dara of Uber's doing it. The Spotify CEO is doing it. It's cool to see that a lot of us are seeing you doing it back in the 2018 days and continue to do it as well. You said something earlier that stuck with me. You said predicting what we want 12 months from now and not necessarily what we want now. Is that kind of what led you to launch a 5G smartphone before 5G had even rolled out in the
Yes.
country?
Yes.
So how did that happen?
Networks were supposed to come in 6 to 8 months of time.
Hmm.
I have seen the transition of India where 2G to 4G. See, there are two things, how I work. One is consumers, but at the same time, I also have to make sure that probably the people who are investing on me, they are getting returns out of it, right? So I'm not doing a social service at the end of the day. But at the same time, my point is very clear that how can I make the business successful? So for me, there were two clear objectives. This is a white space, at the same time, benefits for the consumers. That's a win-win for me. If it's a white space for my huge returns and growth for the company, at the same time it benefits the consumer, that is the only decision which I always take.
Hmm.
So that is one of the most difficult decisions. But I'll tell you about this 5G, and it's a very interesting story. I've seen back in 2014, 2015, when there were 2G or 3G or 3G phones in India, and the Chinese brands came in and they took over with all the 4G phones in India.
Hmm.
So the Indian brands were having a lot of difficulty to liquidate the stocks because everything moved to 4G and they were not able to see the technology shift from 3G to 4G, right? While you may not have, so this was back in 2015, 2016. I always believe in one thing that all the modern day problems, the solutions to the modern day problems lies back in your history and the case studies, right? You don't have to think about anything, but just open up the books in the past, start reading some case studies, you will understand it, how their problems were there. So I understood one thing that this 2G and 3G phones, Indian smartphone brands, the one of the biggest reasons they were dead also was because they were not able to move from a 3G to 4G faster because they had enough of 3G devices left, while all the Chinese brands came with only 4G devices. And it was not just about the marketing investments what the Chinese brands brought into the country, but it was also about the technology. And
Hmm.
this is where another thing which we need to understand, the consumer don't give a shit about nationalism until unless the technology has not been compromised.
Absolutely.
So technology is P0 for them. Priority zero is technology.
Hmm.
Priority one might be from, who is the person who is selling it. Priority two would be from which country it is coming out from. But P0 is always having the latest technology and the best of the products on their hand, and which is a value product which they want to have it on their hand. So that is where I've seen, and this is was one of the biggest case study in my mind, like in 2015, 2016, that this is how the Indian brands were not able to compete against the Chinese brands who completely brought the 4G portfolio, but and these brands had enough of 2G and 3G portfolio to liquidate the stock, and they were not able to do it, and they had to cut down the cost or cut down the margins and cut down even they had to bleed. I'm
Hmm.
not sure the exact financials about it, but they lose a lot of money, and that's the reason. So it is always about the technology shift and staying ahead of the curve.
Hmm.
Technology. This is the only one industry which I like is because we are not developing like one biscuits which will stay for 20 years. Like I love
Right.
Parle-G biscuits. I eat every day. But I see that one SKU being there from last 20, 30 years, I've been there, or maybe more. Technology is the only product where I have to always be on my toes to develop a new product for the next after 3 months or 6 months, what the consumers will want it. Because
Hmm.
the way the technology is evolving every single day, you need to be on toes to make sure that probably you are able to be ahead of the curve. And that's where in Realme I brought all the 5G devices. I
Hmm.
was the first one to latch in with and get whitelisted with all the networks also to make sure that the networks have been latched even before the meeting government had the meeting that probably with Apple or Samsung that when will all your devices latch it. They gave a timeline of about 2 years while I was ready to latch in on the same day itself. So I was the first one to latch in with all the networks that okay, if you have a 5G in your area, my phones will work. And I was the only brand to do that. So sometimes your case study and understanding of the industry and how the technology shift happened will help you to change the perception of your future roadmap also. Okay.
That's fascinating. You talked about learning from history. Munger is very famous for saying, "I learned from the eminent dead." Was this a big bet for you? Because you're saying कि Realme was 5G ready, Apple and Samsung was yet to even meet the government, right? So to source components, to design everything, get it 5G ready, was that a big risk? Was that a big bet for the Realme team?
See, it was a big bet because everything was 4G. While Realme globally, Skyly being the CEO in China, all the other markets were 4G. So I'm trying to push them to
Hmm.
make a 5G device, and still that has to be affordable. That's one of the biggest challenges.
Incredible. So, Madhav, there are these series of decisions that were taken. I'm sure there were millions of them, but at the end of the day, what I'm absorbing from the Realme story is this like breakneck speed. 5 saal mein we went from a small 8 crore pre-seed investment to one of the dominating players. So, uh, tell us like a really super gutsy, controversial call that you took that you felt was a bet the company moment, or one of the places where history turned on a knife point for Realme to get you to that level.
See, from 8 crore rupees of your pre-seed investments to a revenue of around 20,000 crore rupees to a valuation of around 17 or around 12 billion. This is the journey which I've seen. And Realme, the punt which I took, and it was not a journey of 5 years. In 3.5 years, I was number two brand, right? And I think that is the speed which I have always worked upon on understanding the consumer. Uh, Even today, while I'm sitting in some of the malls right now, I am here just observing consumers and how their behavioral patterns are all about. And that's what fascinates me, that understanding consumer spending on how they spend, how they buy a coffee, how they select a coffee, how they what is the decision making on why they want to do it. It is just more about showing others, or is a lifestyle aspiration, or is a usable experience.
Hmm.
So there's a difference between, I always call it, that a person who is needing the device or a technology which is for usage, and another person who is just needing a device for an aspiration to show off, which is an aspiration. So aspiration and usage both are different. So how do you divide that? So I keep on bucketizing all of these things in my mind and keep on working on it. While I started with that 8 crore worth of small investments, which was a very small investment at the same time, that was the only marketing budget which I had, while Oppo or Vivo had bought 1,000 or 1,200 crores worth of team. But I was able to sell more than them in 2.5 years, even after they spending 1,200 crore rupees on every single team. So my budgets had never crossed more than 70, 80 crore rupees on the marketing for the whole year. So marketing is not about money.
Even at that scale, huh, Madhav, even at the
That scale, even at that scale, yes, even at that scale. The only thing which I learned is, because people start making more mistakes when you grow at that scale, uh, you have to have your feet on ground.
Hmm.
Um, I was joking on the stage of the launch of my AI Plus that how many $1 million I would have spent on my logo, because there was a reason I said that, because Realme logo was a very simple one and designed at home, and it worked out fantastically well. But when we start want to spend money, and when you get some good heads in marketing, they would think of designing a logo from a person who has designed the Starbucks logo or anyone, and they
Hmm.
would charge bloody millions of dollars for doing that, right? So that's how your marketing budget shoots up, which is not required ideally. I believe it is not required. I'm not saying it is not relevant. It is relevant, but it is not required at a stage when you are growing and when your consumers are able to connect with you. Then you should be not trying to spend something which is not required. So, as I said, I come from a humble background, so I always believe in spending wisely rather than spending obnoxiously, right? So, marketing budgets, when you hear that 1,000 crores, 1,500 crores, anybody would have it, they're spending obnoxiously, right? The BCCI, as far as I know, at that point of time, was about to give the team, the previous sponsorship was given at around 200, 250 crore. The maximum they expected was 300 crore rupees.
Hmm.
These people, just because they bid and they made it to 1,000, 1,200 crore rupees. It was never an aspiration. The previous sponsorship went for the whole year or for the entire IPL was 200, 250 crore rupees.
So it went up like 5x.
Yeah, 5 years, because they wanted to bid and they had a FOMO that either of us should not, or somebody else should not take it. Oppo should
Hmm.
not take it or Vivo should not take it, because Oppo had by that time taken and signed BCCS with 5x money, and Vivo has spent. So this is how the marketing budget shoots up.
Hmm.
Right. So it is not just about that, you need more marketing budget, but you need to have a sensible budget. Likewise, I give you a very small example. 250 crore rupees deal, they would have been happy with the 350 crore also, but they were happy to get 1,200 or 1,500 crore.
Of course they would be.
Right. So, so now should I say that this is my marketing budget is not there, or this is a foolish decision to be?
True.
Right. So marketing is, I always say, and I'm sure, after listening to this thing, a lot of marketing people are going to hate me for this, but I'll be very honest with you. Marketing is not about money. Marketing is all about targeting the right consumers in the right places.
Hang on.
And that does not require money. That requires ideation. That requires your good content, right?
That doesn't require painting the bathroom blue. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't work. It
Hmm.
doesn't work. But when your company grows and when you have good heads in the company, that's another learning for me, that when you are a Maruti, you should never hire an engine of Ferrari, right?
Yeah.
So because that's the saying which I heard from Alibaba. right? That he also had this type of issue when I was reading his book.
Hmm.
He also said the same thing, and I had gone through the similar stages where when you are at an early stage, and when your company's budget is 10 crore rupees, and you hire a marketing guy who never understands anything below 50 crore rupees, right? So
What is still playing in my mind is even at that scale of rank two, the budget was sub $10 million, which is that means that targeting was bang on. But
that is what we should be doing it, right? Yeah.
absolutely, I think that discipline is something that a lot of times even us in the early stage ecosystem tend to not keep an eye on, right? And this is a very big lesson.
I will tell you, I'll give you a very small example. I just saw it today. Amul's, I just went to one of the reels from Amul CEO.
Hmm.
I was having the perception that Amul would have painted left, right, and center the billboards everywhere.
Hmm.
And we would have thought that at least they would have around 10,000 billboards or 8,000 billboards across India. I loved what he said. He said, I only have 80 or 90 billboards across India, and they only focus on content and consistency.
Really? 80 or 90 across India? That is
Yeah.
that's never the impression, right? Like, because you see the famous Amul girl, that's incredible. I had no clue.
So marketing is not about money. People spend money because it is like hitting every balloon in the sky. कुछ तो लग जाएगा. You will get one consumer out of it. It's like that.
Madhav, before we close the Realme chapter, I don't want people to think that incorporate ho gaya, 8 crore utha liya, and then it's just been everything went super great all the way through, right? There were obviously difficult moments. At one point, you were the Indian face of what was perceived as a very Chinese brand. So just walk us through some of the challenges, some of the feelings. Was there a product launch that didn't go the way you expected? Show us the other side, the difficult side.
I believe that you lose agility when you grow, and hence you have to make people who are more like-minded people to make sure that probably they're always stay with your company, right? I think that's one of the biggest challenges. But at the same time, when your company grows, and when you're expanding, I had also expanded Realme to 90 countries, and that's when you start getting into the boardroom politics,
Yeah.
right? When you're still thinking that you are still agile, but probably you're not agile. And I'll tell you very honestly, one thing which I've learned, and the biggest learning is that your every decision is the right decision today if it is right, if it
Yeah.
is gone right, and every decision is a wrong decision if it is not giving ill to the company. So as a CEO, I'll be already anyways will question even after 5 years of making a decision. So I can be fired for anything in my life for even making a decision 3 years back and ensuring that probably I've been pulled out because of that.
Hmm.
So that's one of the biggest learnings. So when you're too much consumer fanatic, and when you're thinking something which is for good for the boardroom meeting, good for the consumers, but some section of the society still do not accept it, they will try to pull you down after a few years for sure.
Interesting. And so, just walk us up to the final moments. What was the sort of decision making in your mind to you're riding high, you're riding this wave. Realme is killing it. What was the thought in your mind? Ki it's time for me to move on and do something different.
I never thought of moving on. Let me put it very clear. I'm a very old school guy. Right? I would like to stick to for a longevity. My dad is a banker. He started with one bank and ended with one bank itself, right? So he was 45 years working with the one organization. So I think that's what has also been deep rooted in us to have loyalties. And loyalties, I believe, has to be two-way street. It cannot be just one way. And that is what I did not get it from the Chinese brands. And that is which I believe what we learned in management is the world is one. But when it comes to business, I saw that probably Chinese have not evolved out of it. Right? They would still believe to work with Chinese ecosystem more than any other ecosystem. I should have got that indication back in 2016, 17 when their distribution system till today, which are still Chinese and not Indians. Still their sales team, including sales team, are Chinese, not Indians.
Hmm.
So I was the only person and the only Indian CEO in the entire group,
I see.
right? And that led to a lot of eyeballs within the organization because I was making right decisions because it was giving yield to the company, right? And it was growing. 3.5 years, you become a bloody big brand in 90 countries. And I was able to scale it up to 90 countries, getting into operators market and getting the operators contracts done. it was nothing, right? I think probably that was something which was hitting a lot of people under their belly as well. So I knew that I'm making a lot of enemies behind the lines as well.
Hmm.
But I thought that probably the company whom I have built, they will always support me. But yes, I think you'll never be able to sustain the boardroom politics for sure, right?
I can
When you are
imagine.
thinking too much of when you are thinking about the consumers, when you're thinking about the entire beneficial of it. So I'll give you a very small example. I was against having so many series, so many products,
Hmm.
right? You should have a very lean product strategy and very clear strategy on what we need to do it. There's a very thin line between the need and the greed.
Hmm.
The currently Chinese brands, because of they want to control the market and they do not want any other brands to enter into it, they ensured one thing, that probably they created sub brands, sub series, just change of back panel and launching different products in different price points for different channels. But ideally, they are the same products. And I was probably against this, that this is something which is not fair to the consumers, because the consumers, if you're buying from online, you're getting 5,000 rupees cheaper, but still they're buying the same product from offline, just a change of brand and change of back panel. They're getting 10,000 rupees expensive.
Hmm.
There's no point of doing that, right? You're fooling the consumers at the end of the day, and one day the consumers will come to know. My point is not about doing it. My point is that one day the consumers will definitely come to know. And that one day, how will you answer that? Because if I build a community, how will you answer that? So I think that was my biggest pain point.
You know, Madhav, that is fascinating. You talked about loyalty. I was saving this for later, but I think it's really cool to sort of touch upon this now. So there's a sharp contrast, right? Like, while it may have been lacking on one side, you seem to have certainly inspired it. Team followed you from Oppo to Realme, then team followed you from Realme to HTech, and I believe now some members at least are still with you at AI Plus. After a certain point, money can't be the only reason they follow you, right? So how is that happening? How are you? Why are people still working? How are you? How do you convince people to keep taking risks to join you?
I never tell people to join me.
Hmm.
I They understand the vision and the agility which I work with it, right? I have a very flat organization way of thinking. I don't sit in cubicles, right? I sit within them, and I don't make sit down meetings. I don't do sit down boardroom meetings. I do meetings across desk. I do stand up meetings.
Hmm.
So the decisions which has to be made, and I'm very specific and precise on what we have to do, and what is the objective of any meeting, and we have to define the goal of every single meeting before entering into a meeting. Rather than that, we should not be doing it. So I think certain vision and certain principles, let them to follow me and continue building and coming along with me, right? And I think that is what I would also want it, that even whenever they go or wherever they go, they should be called as Madhav's team, right? They should not
Hmm.
be having the CVs. I don't like my team member going out anywhere and showing the CV. They should only one word, which is they used to work in Madhav's core team. That's something which I would love to have it, right? It's not that I want to hold on to them, but even if they go tomorrow anywhere, they
Hmm.
should be called as, without the CV, they should be able to get an offer letter just by one thing, that they were the part of Madhav's team. That's it.
That is awesome. One day Madhav's team soon. As a startup guy, I hope to see Madhav's Mafia, where a lot of startup founders emerge and great companies come out of that. I think I'm also talking, Madhav, to probably the most qualified person to answer this question. Now, when I asked people, I said I'm going to be speaking with you. The most common question I got, and a lot of curiosity, is around the smartphone itself, brand agnostic. Creating it's one of the most modern pieces of technology. And it sounds like this set of incredible trade offs that everybody has to manage within. Large camera, small battery, fast charging, there's a different component. So, walk us through designing a mobile phone. How do you make these trade off decisions? What is the start point?
Yeah. So first of all, understand what are the consumers are. Who are your consumers who are going to buy? Are they traveling by train? Are they traveling by buses?
Hmm.
Was now the situation of electricity is different, but is the tier two and tier four town, how many hours of electricity they have, and how much time they can charge? So if they have a 4 hour charging, should we give a fast charging,
Hmm.
or should we give a bigger battery? So it is a trade-off. Either give a bigger battery or give a smaller battery with a fast charge. It gives same proposition. Giving both does not make sense. That's a marketing jargon.
Hmm.
So at the same time, in today's world, uh, at that time, I'm talking about back in 2018, this were the few of the trade-offs. Second trade-off was, should we have what? 108 megapixel camera or pixel per inch more, or a better lenses more? numbers matter because people understand numbers. I
Hmm.
had to choose number rather than pixel per inch. I would have chosen pixel per inch if my consumers who are tier 2 to tier 4 town would have understood that the output matters more than the numbers,
Exactly.
right? That is what Apple does, right? So here's fantastic. Nobody knows what is Apple's camera lenses are. A 48 megapixel है कि 12 megapixel है.
Hmm.
Output matters. But I knew that my audience would not understand the emotional aspect of a camera. They would understand because we are an online brand, they would only understand through numbers. How can I ensure that probably I give them the right numbers? And that's where the number war started,
The
which
megapixel
was
war.
megapixel war started. And then the fast charging war started. Even on fast charging, I had a lot of debates that it's useless to go above 66 watt fast charging because even if you give 100 watt or 200 watt, the difference of charging for full battery is 2 or 3 minutes. So 66 watt is charging in 8 minutes, and 100 watt is charging in 6 minutes.
फर्क नहीं
Why
पड़ता.
would a consumer bloody pay 2000 rupees more for from a 66 to 100 rupees, 100 watt charging,
Correct.
right? So it's a difference of 2 or 3 minutes. So make it something which is more relevant rather than just using as a marketing jargon. Just because you want to do it, don't do that.
Hmm.
So, sometimes when you do not have any further product ideas and you just want to launch the next generation of phones, and that's where I said that that was my biggest pain point, that when you don't have ideas or you're exhausted, but you still want to launch the phones, which is what is happening in the current market, that you exhaust. And now when you don't have an idea, you just change the back panel with a different branding and you just launch the phones. All the phones are same. So it does not make sense, right? The consumers are not getting any additional advantage. The idea was that moving from first generation to second generation is an upgrade. Without an upgrade, we are not doing anything good to the consumers, anyways, right? So what are we upgrading? Are we getting them a better camera? So I had to trade off from better lenses to number pixels.
Hmm.
Pixels, because we being an online brand, they understood numbers better. 108 megapixels.
I can tell my friend मेरा 100 मेगापिक्सल का है तेरा 50 मेगापिक्सल का है. Yeah.
तेरा 50 का है. And nobody understands from an output,
Hmm.
because output would come at a later stage. First is the numbers, what people understand. It's like, we've been conditioned in that way, right? In school, you were the first and I was fourth. So first or fourth है. But difference would be only maybe 0.5%. But
But I'm still first. Yeah.
still the first, right? So I think that rat race started to happen back
Hmm.
in 2018 of the megapixel war.
Yeah.
Starting from 12 to 16, 16 to 32, 32 to 48, 48 to 64. I remember I was the first one to launch 64. I was the first one to launch 108. So I did that because my consumers from tier 2 to tier 4 town, that was the only tangible asset they would understand it.
Hmm.
For me to lead it as a technology brand.
Hmm.
But if the choice was given, should I do that or no, I wouldn't have done that. I would have chosen a better lenses.
Hmm.
Right?
It's
So
it's
it's a
obviously.
trade-off. Like say for example, if I want to maintain the cost, I'm not saying that it cannot be done in both the ways, having a better lenses and better megapixels. But the cost will increase. But I want to ensure that my consumers, if the budget is only 15,000 rupees, I have to fit my phone within 15,000 rupees.
Hmm.
That's how it works, right?
That's fascinating. And so we have these series of trade-offs. You touched upon something that I want to maybe pull a little bit, pull on that thread a little bit more. It's that understanding of the customer and then saying, hey, if they really benchmark on megapixels, let's give them what they want. What is something about the Indian smartphone buyer that the global brands somehow are getting wrong?
Sitting in a boardroom in China or sitting with a boardroom in some of the European countries, how will you understand the consumer lenses in India? India is a youth country. India has the highest young population. The aspiration from a phone is to do everything and anything. While the average age of population, which I have also established in Europe, is around 40 and 45. They need a good phone. They need a durable phone, and their aspiration from a phone is about more of ESG
Hmm.
rather than what the phone can do, right? They need a good phone which can last longer, which can support the ESG initiatives from the government, which would be like e-waste or any governance part or any societal part. So they've moved to that level, and the average age is around 40 and 45. While China's current average age is also around 40 and 45, so they don't have a youth population. So India, ideally, I believe, should be used as a yardstick to develop a product in the world, because if you are able to succeed in India as a product, then globally you will be able to succeed it. Because Indian consumers, as I said, are one of the most demanding, young population, most demanding from a particular price point, value conscious consumers. If you are able to hit these consumers well and develop a product according to them and being able to, satisfy their aspirations, probably you'll be able to satisfy the global aspirations also. This is my understanding of a product lenses to the global market.
I think that's fascinating. Right now, there is this really cool spotlight put on India. Book Apple has started manufacturing here. A book has come out called Apple in China. Fascinating learnings where over 10 years Apple invested $50 billion a year in China to build capacity. And the core of that book was not just, hey, look at all the money that Apple put into China, but they did a lot of really good technology transfer and learning. And that has led to the boon and the boom of the companies in that country that has then gone on to really impact the economy positively. That didn't really necessarily happen in India. We brought them all here. I don't know if necessarily that happened. Do you see that changing now?
Uh, I believe Apple is one of the smartest company in the world,
Hmm.
right? And they had their own set of learnings from going through their own bankruptcy times back in 1986, 96, and evolving as a major company today, what they are. It takes a gradual journey. That's what I started with. Brand is never built by spray painting down left, right, and center. Brand is built by, and consumers will be only able to connect with you once you have the value fundamental systems which are right in place. So Apple's strategy has always been very clear. I believe one thing that they have a very strong understanding of the supply chain bit, which becomes the core fundamental pillar for the brand. Apple has never invested by himself in any country, as far as I believe so, because they've made sure that their partners invest on behalf of them, and they'll be able to sustain a long-term business to them. So against which they give the guarantee of doing business, but Apple has never invested, would have invested to some extent, but what I see right now is their partners who invest more.
Hmm.
So it would be the supply chain partners, component partners, government who invest on behalf of Apple to make sure that probably they continue to invest on Apple and get their business done. Right.
That is
So
fascinating.
hence I say that they are one of the smartest company in the world. Right?
Very cool. And the narrative has always been that China mein ho raha hai because there's economies of scale, there's a very strong ecosystem, and therefore it makes a lot of sense to manufacture in China. I know that you are going to be manufacturing here and you have already started manufacturing here. So what has changed? Why is it now viable to start manufacturing in India?
Policies from 2014, I believe the government has been pushing, and I think is a very extremely important part to understand that technology transfer and technology know-how transfer is not like an instant noodles, which would be made in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years.
Hmm.
I like to draw upon an example which I always draw upon that Taiwan used to be a shoe and a fruit exporter back in 1970. They did not know anything about semiconductors.
Morris Chang came in. Yeah.
Yeah, so they started doing semiconductors back in 70s and between 80s. First area, they were just trying to figure out to do the JV partnership, somebody coming to there and government supporting to put up a small factory and fabrication over there. Then they started putting up the incubation centers within the universities. They
Correct.
started putting up the lines within the university that it is like an incubation center where the students used to come downstairs and do a real-time internship on the assembly lines. It may be from Intel or from Philips or from anyone, right? So that's how they learned and become an economy after 40, 50 years, what they are today, and exporting more than $450 billion worth of electronic export from Taiwan. So between Taiwan and China, there are total around more than $900 billion worth of electronic exports. India is at a nascent stage of around $30 billion,
Hmm.
mainly credited to Apple at this point of time. Right. So I think there's a huge opportunity coming out from India and going globally. But I'll tell you one thing. It's an interesting question that why it takes Apple, as I said, that the ecosystem invest. Like say for example, one of the smallest example I would say, Apple EMS partners are Foxconn
Hmm.
in China and India who manufactures for them. They have got 50,000, 100,000 labors, but if they are manufacturing exclusively for Apple and maybe a few others also. I'm just giving an example which I am aware of. They have made an investment on behalf in that country in association with the governments, local governments, to ensure to set up and get all the benefits to the consumers. While China used to be a sweatshop back in 1990s and 2000, right? That
Right.
is the reason everybody shifted from Japan to China because the technology shift. When Japan came into a lot of labor laws and everything, and Japan started to become expensive, every production started shifting down to China in 80s and between 2000. And China used to be considered as a sweatshop. What we see today, Shenzhen, which is a swanky, buildings, used to be a mud houses back in 1980s and 90s, right? It became an economy where then the president who decided to change the country's landscape to make it as a manufacturing and assembly hub to begin with. So
Hmm.
they also took around 40 years, 30 years, 40 years on what they are today. I think we started, as far as I understand, 2014, when the government came in, started pushing for electronic exports and electronic local manufacturing. In 2018, also when I started Realme, I met multiple meeting ministers, and they continuously and categorically said that they have to start doing exports from India. So I know that the agenda is very strong up and above to make sure that we're making India and exporting from India.
Hmm.
So it takes time and effort, and that's how it is. So when it comes to an ecosystem of Apple, the ecosystem which they have invested already, the capex investment, which was through the subsidies or through their own investment. Like I'm just giving a hypothetical situation that maybe 50% of the land is supported by the government and manpower cost is supported by the government for the first 10, 15 years.
Right.
That is the reason the sweatshop in China was established. While Apple, Nike, everyone were criticized for being called themselves as a sweatshop in China, right? They were criticized against the labor laws that they are using China as a sweatshop. But that's how the labor laws also started coming into picture. So today they are at a stage that they are much more expensive than India at this point of time. So we think that China is cheaper. I think they are expensive. Their manpower cost is 5 times than India cost in terms of electronic manufacturing. Point number one. We
Hmm.
are at one-fifth cost of China, but technology know-how, they have got enough. They would have double of what we have.
Hmm.
So hence government is pushing on two different agenda. One is technology know-how transfer and one is technology transfer. So this component ecosystem incentive link scheme, which has been PLI 2.0, is also one thing that probably how to bring the component ecosystem of manufacturing into India. So it is more about that, it is like a mall and an anchor shop. If you are opening up a mall and if you have an anchor shop, all other brands will also continue to start springing up around over there. So there used to be an anchor shop concept that every mall used to have an anchor shop. So this country, Apple used to be like an anchor brand. If Apple is there, then all the entire component ecosystem will start coming across because of their volumes and economies of scale.
Hmm.
Right, with their ASP is also high. So it's one of the best proposition for them. But at the same time, I think, as I said, Apple is one of the smartest company. While their ecosystem always invest on them, and Apple has always outsourced entire ecosystem, except the designing, which is completely controlled by them, which is the fair and the best way. And I would say the tough jobs and the hard jobs are done outsourced always. So just before getting into honor, I would just like to say one thing on the component ecosystem side because I
Yeah.
think it's important on the component ecosystem when you're establishing in India or where you're establishing in India, it requires a huge investment in capex investment and a long-term vision. So, the long-term investments, which would be tuning up to billions of dollars, and then getting the business out of it,
Hmm.
which is guaranteeing the business out of it, is also one of the biggest challenge. Hence, that's where the technology transfer comes into play. One
Ji.
is the capex and one is the continuation of the business.
Hmm.
That if you like I know one of the company who manufacture glasses in China for Apple, and they've invested billions of dollars in the lines over a period of years on making this particular buying from Gorilla Glass, but fabricating it in China, and on fabrication also they have invested billions of dollars.
Hmm.
One line would cost nothing less than around $1 billion, right? So they've established about 15, 20 lines. So to pull their capex in India, that's point number one. Secondly, even if somebody thinks of putting up their capex in India, will the business continuation of Apple, depending on Apple? That is also another second biggest challenge for any component ecosystem to have the confidence to do that. With the new geopolitical scenario of what Trump is trying to push to everyone, everything to US, which is China plus one. So I think that is a dilemma. And third thing is about technology transfer and technology know-how transfer.
Hmm.
And at the same time, person should have the intent. which I said about the three I, the intent to transfer the technology know-how also to another country,
Hmm.
right? It happened from Japan to China, China to India. It has to happen. Now it can be happened by choice or it can be happened by force. But the first thing of the capex investments and the continuation of the business will come, and then the intent of transferring the technology know-how.
True.
Right. So these three things I believe are the fundamental pillars to move the entire PLI industry or entire component ecosystem in.
And we're seeing positivity there. We're seeing some direction there. The intent is happening, right?
I think government is smart enough. I think today's ministers, which I used to meet before 2014 and now, I think they have the numbers on their hands.
Hmm.
They exactly know how much it is and what it is. Right? They know the bomb cost, they know the component cost, they know every single thing. Right. So they're very sharp. Today is, I think, when I speak to anybody in Meti, everybody knows everything, and they are hands-on on numbers at this point of time, and which is very good, in fact, to us to bridge that communication gap also and to have the executions faster. So PLI 2.0 was designed to bring the component ecosystem for that particular purpose itself.
Got it. I think there's a whole podcast in and of itself in learning how these kinds of things are set up. It's fascinating how one player can centralize strategy around so many other smaller folks, getting them to invest and build. I think while that happened in China, what I'm understanding now is slowly the ecosystem is picking up in India, and that's what's keeping us very excited. The opportunity बहुत बड़ा है. Massive market is awaiting for us.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Madhav, let's draw a bridge between Realme and today. In the middle, there was this really interesting work done with Honor, with Alcatel. Just lay that out for me. There was this really interesting deal struck where Honor was not, where the licensing with Honor to bring them into India was done via another entity in India with no royalties going back to Honor. So, just help us understand that as well for a bit, and then we'll touch upon AI Plus.
So HonorTech was one of the journey that I knew that in this world, what is more important is the designs and patents uh, for a long-term sustainable business, right? So if I have to give a simple metaphor, then Nokia has exited the B2C space completely, but they still earn the royalties from whatever patents, whatever they have
Hmm.
from last so many years. And they've been still getting 30% of the 5G revenues across the world for having their patents which they had designed. So designing is one of the key things for a long-term sustainable technology brand. That's point number one, which is in China, and I think Honor had more than 18,000 patents with their hands.
Okay.
So I was inclined to bring that and use that patents in India, but not one thing which was there when I learned from Realme is that I want to have a complete authority on decision making to on how to run a brand in India. Right? I did not wanted any product making decisions or anything as such. I wanted to have the complete authority on making decisions of go-to markets to ensuring which product is good for the consumers and what is right for the consumer, and did not want an intervention on anything. Right.
Hmm.
But I think that's my biggest mistake and biggest learning, I would say, with Honor and HonorTech. Right. With Honor, the vision was to establish a local manufacturer.
Hmm.
Uh, so we wanted to test products with bringing the CPU, which is completely built units, right? But eventually understood that probably they were not serious of manufacturing in India,
I see.
right? And that I think was the biggest learning for me that these Chinese brands can be extremely transactional. They can be transactional to a tune that if they see the business, they will come.
Hmm.
If they don't see the business, they will not come. So they are not thinking of long-term sustainable business. They are thinking of a quick and cashing opportunity of India as a consumer market
Hmm.
because India is a huge consumption economy also. So that's the reason I say my reading is the biggest mistake. That this is my reading was right. I'm not talking about Honor as a brand; they're a very good brand. My reading for them as a establishing as a long-term sustainable brand was the biggest mistake. Until they do not establish the local manufacturing, uh, I shouldn't have started that. Maybe I was more desperate after Realme to start out that particular thing, but
Mhm.
probably I think I should have waited and I should have taken a pause and then I would have started. Right. So I think that was my biggest learning, or I would say failure in my life, and hence I say that only pain point with that is the consumers are not able to get the right product on their hands because
Hmm.
of that. which in turn also implicates that probably I'm not able to make a right decision out of it, right? While my decisions are only 30% of the decisions and brand decision because the product and everything is with them, it's still 70%. And coming down to India and establishing a manufacturing it is still long term. While we had the agreements to do that, but it was never executed over a period of time. While they have never denied until date, they still want to do it, but they're still evaluating.
Hmm.
India, we cannot have, I think it's more than 24 months, and I cannot wait for it, that to make a decision, a small, simple decision that without having a local manufacturing, it is not possible to do business in India. So
Absolutely.
that was the basic fundamental thing. So I understood that after 24 months, that even the basic fundamental thing took me 24 months. Should I really waste my time, or
Hmm.
should I, do a stop loss and move on? Yes, that's how it was.
That's fascinating. And thanks for sharing that, Madhav. Was it this experience and learning that made you take the decision to create AI Plus and Next Quantum as a standalone rather than going with another partner?
So Realme gave me at one point that probably I have to be an independent of my decision making, right? Because
Hmm.
once you start believing in Chinese, they will always think about what is beneficial for them, not
Hmm.
beneficial for Indian consumers. Secondly, after Honor, I understood one thing that why to waste bloody time on someone else's brand
Yeah.
and build someone else's baby rather than build your own baby and build from scratch.
Hmm.
You'll have all the challenges. At least you will have complete control over it and build everything from that way.
Madhav, we've been teasing it for a while now. Tell us about your baby. Tell us about AI Plus. Tell us about Next Quantum. What are these two things, and what is the thesis behind this?
The three fundamental pillars when I started thinking, and I was with Honor at that point, that what are the core concerns right now in the near future? Three fundamental pillars that came to my mind was A was democratization, D was transparency, third was security. So you can number it out anyways. But at the same time, when it comes to democratization, it can only be done through hardware. While transparency and security can be done through the software part. So when it comes to transparency and security, I had to ensure that probably I built an OS or a layer of skin in India and start building up the first base, which is the transparency. While the DPDPA Act is supposed to come down, I have to make sure that the consumer should be aware of it. So let me touch upon the first fundamental pillar, which was democratization. So I had one belief after the three fundamental pillar. One was democratization, transparency, and third was about security or privacy. So on these three pillars, the first pillar about democratization, which I saw the biggest gap was that in India we still have 450 million 2G users.
Yeah.
There's 650 million smartphone users. And we are a population of 1.5 billion people, and we are about to add 350 million smartphone users in next 2 or 3 years. But this 50 million feature phone users are getting every year added to it. Why can't they become the part of the digital economy?
Hmm.
Right. So that was one of the biggest questions. So democratization became in my mind that basically what can I do? Again, going back to my base fundamental that business should make sense and consumers should get benefit. This both should have been there. So hence I launched a 4G complete 4G phone with a complete battery life of 5000 milliamp hour, 2 days battery life, 50 megapixel camera, bold 5 color designs, no compromise on quality, with 1 year service, 270 service centers from day one, and having a 6.7-inch display with that 4,500 rupees, which was a groundbreaking thing in a way that probably it is like 2,000 rupees or 2,000, 3,000 rupees cheaper than any Chinese brand in the
Exactly.
market.
Exactly.
Why I'm saying Chinese brand is not, I'm not against Chinese brand because right now they're covering 80% of the market. You need to understand the market, 150 million handsets, 80% in terms of volumes is covered by Chinese brand. And hence I call it a monopoly and a duopoly market, right? Because this, out of this 80%, it's mainly one group who is controlling more than 65% of the market,
True.
right? So it's a monopoly and duopoly market, and that's the reason I call it that, it is more controlled market, and hence I see the white space. So I saw the white space that, probably the consumers are at 2,000 rupees. The maximum price of a 2G consumer would be 2,000 rupees. They would be able to spend on a shell out on a phone to make sure that they are connected with their family and friends. What if they are able to, spend more with a no cost EMI of Bajaj and anyone, and they can afford a phone with just three EMIs, which is lesser than a feature phone.
Hmm.
What if I'm able to bring that? So I think that was the first idea of democratization. Second was to make 5G also accessible to everyone. So I made a 7,500 rupees complete 5G phone. While current 5G phones are network locked. So at 7,999 or 8,999, they are network locked 5G phones which you are only allowed to do and work with one network. Again, here, this brand launched a phone thinking that India is a price conscious market, but they did not understand here again, they made a mistake, it's a value conscious market.
Correct.
India, mein, you will never be able to sell a lock phones. So it's a network lock phones at 7,999, 5G phone.
Hmm.
So they thought that is a difference between understanding the consumers and sitting in a boardroom somewhere outside India and understanding the consumers from a PPT lens perspective, right? And understanding a consumer when sitting within them. So a consumer in India would is an open market, open SIM market in the sense India has never been a network operated or handset driven market through operators like US and Europe. India is an open SIM market, which means that there's no SIM lock. So they gave a phone which was a 7,999 or 8,999 SIM lock phones with one network only. I gave a 7,500 or 8,000 rupees phone with a double the specs of it and all networks less on it. Right?
Customer के लिए no brainer.
No brainer customers, right? You don't have to think कि ये नेटवर्क चलेगा, ये नेटवर्क नहीं चलेगा, ये मेरे एरिया में होगा, ये मेरे एरिया में it's all network. So I think that's where you have to understanding of consumer lens
Absolutely.
completely changes things.
In a previous podcast, we had Rukmini, who's the author of Whole Numbers and Half Truths, runs data for India, and she revealed something very interesting, which is the bulk of the phones in this segment are still shared use, still shared between the family and not necessarily a personal thing, which means that the headroom to grow is crazy. But how are you planning at that price point? The budgets are much sharper. How are you planning go to market? How are you planning to get these people to get educated about AI Plus's offerings and getting it in their hands?
See, understand one thing. If I can build a plan of 20,000 crore rupees with an 8 crore rupees of humble budget to start off, I know that probably how the things have to reach out to the consumers. Here again, I have done my partnership with Flipkart and I'm thankful for that. I've been able to reach and my word of mouth has already been across India around 23% in just 1 month of launch, which is fair enough for me at this point of time.
That's incredible. Fair enough is an understatement, man.
Yeah. No, no, that's a fair enough for me, right? My aspirations, yes, are to at least 70-80% people should know about my brand. To buy or not to buy is a different thing, but to understanding of a brand is very important. So yes, that's what also has Flipkart has helped me to do that.
Hmm.
At the same time, people have connected very well that yes, there can be a ladder of pricing, and why do I really need? So I met, it was a very surprising story. When I designed the phone, I thought that I'll design a complete phone for a tier 2 to tier 4 market. What I actually saw is there are a lot of people in metros who are buying this. My biggest three markets have been metros at
Interesting.
this point of time.
Hmm.
And metros, because I think there are people who are working across. There are migrants, people who are working across. They also want to be digitally connected with their family. They
Hmm.
also want to do a video call with their family.
Hmm.
They also want to stay connected. So when you talk about the devices headroom, yes, but everybody now has a personal content and they all need their own shared space, which is within their family and with their connection with their family, because they also see people like you and me talking to other people on a video call. So they would also like to move. They were the first one to migrate from a feature phone to a smartphone. And that's the very interesting story. The metros have become the biggest consumption phone, which I was thinking other way around from tier 2 to tier 4 town.
It's interesting, and just to tie it back, it's the same things that people were saying on the greeting cards. They are now saying on your smartphone. So I think that's pretty cool. Yeah. Tell me, how are you bringing the Made in India first angle for AI Plus?
See, this is more about domestic value addition. One thing which I understood is these brands, they control the supply chain because these brands are sitting down in China, right? It may be any chipset industry or it may be camera components, it may be battery components or anything. But these brands headquartered are based out of China or anywhere outside India. They'll be able to control the supply chain outside India.
Hmm.
What does it lack for India? I'll tell you one thing. The transparency of transfer pricing. That's first biggest drawback which I believe in it. Secondly, the benefits of economies of scale, which India gives, the benefits are not coming to India, and the Indians are not able to get benefit. Thirdly, there's no tax benefit to the consumers in India, or neither to the government, because if the government gets the tax benefits out of it, it will be passed on anyway to the consumers only. But because I think government had taken a stringent action after 10 years that you have not paid a tax in India.
Hmm.
And I was very surprised that in one of the meetings, that one of the Chinese school just categorically said that we are paying GST. They do not even understand the difference between the direct taxes and indirect taxes. So, making a folly out of the compliances and just using India as a consumption market
Hmm.
is their understanding of doing business in India, right? So I think giving back to the society is also very relevant
Hmm.
and very important when you're doing business in India. Which brands like Samsung and everyone has learned over a period of years that establishing in a country, going deep rooted, working with the people across, and other Apples also, right? So they develop the ecosystem as well. So fundamentally strong is very important while using India as just a consumption market and selling the boxes or pushing the boxes will won't help. That's how it is, right?
Got it. And there's this conversation about how at one point it was all sold on their books as no profit, no loss. All the money was what could have been profit was pushed into marketing, and a lot of these tactics were used. I'm glad to see that now we have an entity in India that is doing right for India by India. How are you thinking about expanding into a local ecosystem? Nothing started by doing earbuds and then expanded through phones. What is your product strategy? The two phones, Nova and Pulse, are out. What's happening next?
Uh, we will enter into different categories and ecosystem. I have always believed in ecosystem play,
Hmm.
right? And connected ecosystem is the strongest belief. I always have that, right? So the connected ecosystem is something which I will continue to build over it. And yes, I'll be launching few more categories before this year end.
Super excited about that. And tell us about the software underpinning it. Next Quantum OS sounds to be one of the first really strong attempts at an Indian Android native OS. So could you tell us a little bit more about Next Quantum OS?
I told you the two fundamental pillars for developing it was transparency and privacy.
Hmm.
While I spoke about the democratization and pricing factor, while I also like to add one more point on the democratization front, where I do not have to pay any royalties out going out. So there's a difference of 2,000, 2,500 rupees on every devices between me and any other brand at this point of time. That's where the consumer gets benefit.
Hmm.
And pushing into marketing and sharing of the profits and transfer pricing has always been a question on the transparent transfer pricing because the companies from there or A company to B company and what has been transferred to India has never been shared and never been transparent, right? While anything can be said as an R&D expenditures or royalty payments, but we never know that profit has been pulled out as R&D expenditures or royalty payments in what way.
Hmm.
So that was one of the biggest drawback of not being transparent to the economy and having a own domicile company in India, which will really lead to bring transparency into the system of manufacturing and bringing the component ecosystem if I am able to succeed on it. Right. That's how it is. So that was one of the attempt while establishing a brand.
Got it.
Secondly, on talking about the OS, it is very clear on one thing. While data privacy and convenience, if you go to any customers, people will always choose convenience over data privacy. I spoke to a few of the community members before launching this OS. They said, "Bhai, मैं थोड़ी James Bond हूँ. I'm not a James Bond that even if my data goes to anywhere, I don't give a shit about it."
Very common thing, yeah.
Very common thing. But they are not ready to compromise the convenience.
Hmm.
So I had to ensure that the convenience has not been compromised, which means that Android 15 has to be the base out for them. And Android 15 and the upgrade and the security patches are extremely important for them to continue to use their apps and make sure they probably do it. But how to over a period of time move it to a more independent resources. That was
Hmm.
the journey which I've already mapped it. So
Hmm.
the first thing about it is about transparency. While I always believe that data security is has become a part of consumers mindset that ये तो government देखेगी और industry देखेगी. It is the job of government and industry. It is not my job. It
Hmm.
is government and industry's job to focus on it. While yes, I agree. Well, government is doing a lot of things on the terms of and pushing up a lot of bills across it. But why will industry in India do it? Because I saw that industry in India is nothing in India. Why would they bloody focus on it? And why would they even support that particular thing? That's point number two. But at the same time, these two people has to educate the consumers, and that is the job of the industry and the government to educate the consumers that this is how your data can be at risk and how it can be addressed in the near future, right? Only people like, I spoken to few of the people in Bihar and everyone where there are Chinese fintech firms. We used to give unsecured loans to the consumers, which were banned later at later stages by the government. And these people had to do a lot of, I think, gone through suicides and their family suicides
Yeah.
because their data were used, their camera pictures were used and shared to their family members also.
Yes.
So that is how the accessibility can be done by anyone when you just say okay to anything. Because in India, we only have one option to say okay while
Yeah.
we're installing an app. While in Europe and US, you are still allowed to use an app after if you are saying that your data will not be shared for marketing purpose or for this content or for that content. So you're given a choices and still allowed to use the app. While India, you cannot use the app until you give okay to it. So that is the difference, and I think that is what is changing now. So that education is extremely important for the consumers, and that is where I believe that their convenience should not be compromised, but at the same time their education is important and should be done by the industry leaders and by the government together.
I think for the people listening, I want to underline this because this is another probably crazy example of you thinking 12 months ahead. Because while people will have this understanding that at that price point, privacy may not be top of mind, it's going to be. Everybody has heard a story of these loan sharks, everybody has heard a story of these collection agents, but it doesn't just stop there, right? Soon privacy will slowly become, managing my information will become so important. And the fact that we're positioned here today, it's almost like launching a 5G phone before 5G is rolled out, right? I think I think that that is awesome. Madhav, the Android ecosystem, people bash it quite a bit, saying profit pool nahi hai, or it's difficult to build. How are you thinking about building sustainable and a profit pool within this ecosystem?
uh, I'll tell you very honestly, I'm trying to build my own app store and creating a developers community.
Hmm.
So I want to give a platform to the developers in India because I believe that India has exported software since years and decades,
Hmm.
right? Let me put it that way.
Hmm.
India has got a huge technical know-how in terms of developing certain things and huge pool of developers. I want to give them a platform where they'll be able to showcase. So I have a very clear philosophy and a very simple philosophy. If you want to sell your fuel, you need to have a car.
Yeah.
My car is my phone, and if I want to sell my fuel, then I will be selling my fuel once my car is being sold. So, but you cannot sell it independently, both of them. That
Correct.
is one thing I like. So, if I'm just trying to build my fuel, which is only my OS, which hardware will install it? Even if I'm developing one of the best things, who will install it? Nobody would be there, right? So, better I create my own
Hmm.
fuel and my own car to promote my own fuel over a period of time without ensuring that probably their convenience has been compromised. Right, that's how it is.
Is a
So
is
I
a
think that was the thought process here.
Got it. So is a summarization of this strategy that the product is NxtQuantum OS and the distribution is AI plus?
Yeah, you can say that. Yes, product is because we are a software company
Mm-hmm.
and we are a software company, but hardware is one of the basic tools to ensure that probably it reaches to the masses, right?
Right.
That's how it would be.
And then you strike me as like a really solid forward looking thinker. So let's exchange hats for a second. Let's say you're a venture capitalist in this space. Where would you place your bet? What is exciting to you right now in the smartphone and in the Android ecosystem?
I'll be honest with you, if I am a venture capitalist, I would completely place my bet on you. The reason is because if you are Madhav, right? Uh, but if I'm a if I'm thinking long term
Yeah.
and a patient capital, R&D is about patient capital. Right now, any venture capitalist does not have a vision beyond 1 year in any company or 2 years beyond any company. So I would not blame completely the founders of messing up the product lines and going to the market and having the go-to-market strategy pushed up because of the pressure from the investors of having the revenues and the coming up faster and showing your top line faster. I always believe in one thing, that probably you need to have that patient capital to have that separate R&D centers and well paid. While I have also went through all of that things, so hence I ensure that my working capital is separate and my R&D investments are separate. So I have my GTM strategy very completely clear. Can go to the market. While what I want to invest on is something which I'll be only focusing on that sort of investors who understand that particular perspective of what will it lead to have a design and a patent in the company, and that is what R&D will lead to. If that one patent can lead to billions of dollars for you in the near future, investing few millions right now will give you a lot of benefits over a period of 5 7 years. So having the patient capital is important. So right now, what I only believe as a venture capitalist, if I'm thinking, I'll be thinking long term, because having just a top line with my, because I always believe currently the race is to the bottom. I see the race is to the bottom. The race to bottom, anybody can do it, right? Even if I tell you you can sell a phone at 1,000 rupees, I'll give you my smartphone.
Any fool can run a company in the red.
And you don't need to be a CEO, right? Even my peon can sell more than you. You being mother, my peon can sell more than you. If I give him, if I'm an investor, I tell you that okay, you burn 2,000 rupees
Hmm.
and sell this phone. You don't need a CEO, you don't need a tech team. You just need one person who can go to the market and say that why this phone is available at this price. Right? That's it. There is no strategy to it, right? So it's just a race to bottom. And the race to bottom is no end to it, right? And at the end of the day, when the investors move out, the founders are only left with it.
Hmm.
And when the founders are only left with it, fundamentally they will never be able to build up the company again. Until unless you have the patient capital of 10 to 14 years. I'm talking about few of the investors in India. This is what I've heard about the mindset, right? I'm
Hmm.
not talking about everyone. But I've seen in the Silicon Valley and across in Japan and China, they've changed the thought process. Now they're investing long term. And they're taking the capital bets on long term.
Hmm. I think definitely the way in which the venture ecosystem, see, we're still very early. The way in which this is going to evolve, hopefully, we have more investors with a longer capital cycle that can support these ventures. We need it. We had a lot of that happening in China and Japan, a lot of that in the US. I think India slowly is waking up to the need of this, and with deep tech being the conversation of the hour, my fingers are firmly crossed that we build more pools of capital that are longer. Madhav,
When you say about deep tech, you need to invest deep tech and deep hours and deep time also, right?
hmm.
So that patient capital comes for deep tech, which is extremely important. While everybody wants to be the part of a deep tech, a piece of a deep tech, everybody wants to have a pie of a deep tech. While we are a software company with a deep tech investments into this particular thing, while we are establishing the entire R&D center into India, which I am doing that right now. But I'm ensuring that probably my GTM strategy is also in place and my R&D is also in place,
Hmm.
right? So I'm not putting up my R&D for 7 years and then starting the product. I knew that I will be facing these challenges, and hence I'm also ahead of curve to make sure that probably my product line is also up and running.
So, super thin tightrope to be walking, no?
It is, as I said, your every decision will be questioned after 2 years or 3 years, and you can be proven wrong. For whatever decision which is right today can be proven wrong after 3 years also.
Hmm. Speaking of down the road 3 years, Madhav, what is your vision? What is the future of AI plus? What is success? What needs to happen 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, for you to say, hey, this was a great call. AI plus and Next Quantum have been a success.
See, the way I look at it is, I want to develop a complete ecosystem brand and get into a complete ecosystem build up, which is not just about anything. It would be connected ecosystem, and connected ecosystem has no boundaries today. It enters in the smartphone becomes the hub of it. It may be audio, it may be wearables, it may be tablets, it may be home automations, it may be lights, it may be anything, and it may go up to EVs also. So it's all connected ecosystem
Hmm.
because everything is running on a connected ecosystem now, right? Uh, that's what is more fascinating for me. That how many circles I'll be able to cross in next 3 to 5 years to ensure that probably which circle I'm crossing it, and how many connected ecosystem I'll be able to bring it over a period of time. That will also depend on the journey on how I'm able to bring the right product at the same time how I'm able to get the right investments into the company at the right time.
Madhav, India has tried in the past to build these brands. We may have, may not have had success. Biome and a billion Indians wish you well, man. We really want to see a company go out there, make it, and prove itself on a global brand. Thank you so much for taking the time. And
Just one thing.
yeah.
Just one thing. There are no brands who have tried in last one decade. This is one of the saddest story in India.
Hmm.
Not even one brand in India has come up or even tried in last 10 years.
It's a lot of just rebadging, right?
No, no rebadging. Talking about one Indian brand who has tried to come up from India in last 10 years.
Hmm.
They were there, they shut down.
Right.
But there was no new brand who even
Right.
thought of coming up, right? So in last 10 years, there's not even one brand who had thought about this thing, right? And when I started this thing, I also knocked multiple doors and I was called crazy, right? How will you fight against the Chinese brand?
Hmm.
But I think they did not have the patience to understand that I started this brand for 8 crore rupees. They did not understand that point of view.
I think that is a real headline. I think that is just such a so many fascinating lessons and so many fascinating stories here. We're all rooting for you, man.
Likewise,
Thank you
likewise.
so much,
Right.
and really appreciate you taking the time, Madhav.